How are you? The strawberry fairy came, Richard, so be sure and take this home with you.
Sorry, I didn't see that.
The strawberry fairy came, so be sure and take this home with you.
Thank you, Linda.
You didn't grow them yourself, did you?
No, I wish I did. Nor did I pick them myself. I was picked for it.
Okay, good. 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 How'd everybody else? Well, we got a new dog. And it's been kind of, he's been a hit. One strawberries.
I'm home.
Highlander. Smoking. And is that real close to here?
Yes. Only about, once you turn off of 15,000 around 22, like you want the airport, I'm about 2 miles. You're right on the, can't miss it.
Do they sell other stuff?
Right.
Is it purely strawberries they sell?
Yeah, they have it on to the home. And you know, the essence of the sun and the home.
You sign in, or are you plan on signing up for public comment? Nope. Okay, you got an agenda?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
All right, the time is 6 o'clock. My name is Elizabeth Mangrum, Chair of the Moore County Board of Elections, and I now call this meeting to order. I'm going to ask members of the board, even though we have a full slate here today, I'm going to call your name and ask that you raise your hands so that you can be identified to the public. Susan Adams, Richard Ashton, Craig Kennedy, and Mr. Bill Kay. Thank you. Mr. Kennedy, would you please lead us to the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
No one has signed up for public comment tonight, so I will begin by reminding board members of your duty and obligation to avoid conflicts of interest or the appearance thereof. Having reviewed this evening's agenda, does any member have a conflict of interest? Hearing none, we will move to approve the meeting minutes of our prior meeting. Has everyone reviewed the minutes, or would you like the minutes?
So I'll move to approve the minutes that we reviewed.
Okay, so a motion's been made and seconded to approve our prior meeting minutes. All those in favor, do you have any discussion, Susan? Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
And Craig, you have the originals that you need to sign.
Opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Mrs. Clendenin, would you begin this evening with your report on voting place review and ADA compliance in Cameron and Pinehurst C2?
Every 2 years, we go back out and we inspect each voting place to make sure that they are compliant with ADA regulations. The state recently realized that they had not kept up with our reports, and so they wanted to make sure they had ours. And there's a very brief report, and then there's a detailed report. They were satisfied with the brief report. And in the past, and if it's the will of the board, we'll do this again, that we will go out with the compliance officer, which is the head building inspector with the county, to inspect them and make sure if there are things that need to be corrected, that it gets noted. And then shortly after you're sworn in July, we will take another trip to see those that y'all would like to look at and advise you of anything that needs doing. And we'll also decide if there needs to be any changes due to maybe changes in the way we do business, which, Madam Chairman, brings me up to the Cameron precinct and the D2, which is Pinecrest. And I'm going to tell a funny. I have Mr. Barath from Moore County Schools in my phone. And so I decided I would text him. And so I'm texting and I get John out. And you know how our helpful spellers go ahead and spell out things for it. You went ahead and put Johnny. And before I realized that I hit send. I would never call John Barath Johnny, but anyway. So before I could type, oops, pardon me, he answered me. And he said, nobody's called me that since my grandmother was. What can I help you with? But he was very, very congenial and laughed about it. But I do need to apologize in person to him. But he is saying, as far as Pinecrest is concerned, that he's happy with us being in the cafeteria and that they have already made it a teacher work day. I think we're going to find that schools are not going to hesitate to do that for us, and poor kids won't get any more snow days because they've learned they can be taught virtually, right? So anyway, so we had a good conversation in texting, not personally, but we know that it worked out better, and the chief judge in that location said it was so much better over there. So we won't have to make any immediate decisions about that for the coming years. So we'd be fine if y'all want to stay at the cafeteria. And I know that Cameron School would be very happy as much as they bounce us around if we stayed with the cafeteria. So if y'all think that's gonna be the decision you'd like to continue with, we'll go ahead and make that, and go out with the inspector and make the initial inspections, and we'll go to those two cafeterias. Is there any discussion?
They're good improvement. I do like it, as long as the school is not in session. That was the only thing that concerned me, that moving to the cafeteria was working only because of COVID. So I think that's great, and I think that also takes another issue off the table of schools being in session. They've already made it a work day, so that makes everything so much easier. Appreciate that.
And every time my husband and I go down Morganton Road, he says, where is that new school? So I did call our GIS department to ask them to give us an update of tax exempt property in Pinehurst C, which is a fair barn, because it really is not inside the limits of, it's adjacent to the Pinehurst C line and Pinehurst B2. And it's great that they're able to work from home. They could do all the work and they could print them out, but there's nobody there to go in that office and pull that map to hand it to them. So they're not in the office. I told her it was not a rush thing, but Madam Chair, the next time we meet, we will have that just for our information as we go forward. Okay.
Great, thank you. Do you have a report or any other discussion on those sites? Is everybody in agreement?
Now, there may be things after we make our inspection and review how things were last election that we may, as board, have to decide. But I was thrilled that he said, you know, Glenda, we now have given you that day as a teacher work day, because we are in high falls, you know, so it just frees us up in case we have to use other facilities that are owned by the school or used by the schools. So.
Okay. So I think that's good to go ahead and proceed with that and
Okay.
make those arrangements. Do you have a report on the HAVA and CARES Act funding?
We do. You have a stapled copy in front of you. And it ended up that they did not send the money to the county to manage. We just sent them in the receipts, which was much easier. And even though the county had said they'd do it, the grant person for the county was thrilled that we handled that way. So we got $98,000, 2007, and we spent 98, 2007, and you'll see the things that we spent them for. Now on the HAVA grant, if you'll turn over, we still have some money there. And I have talked with property management about putting a keypad on the vault to have more security in that lock rather than it just being a key. So they have contacted a locksmith to talk to us about doing that. And I have been in a virtual conference with other directors for the past 3 days. And we had an emergency management person from a different county to talk to us today about some of the things that they have done. And they actually have a lot of portable generators. Now, you'll remember the county had portable generators for all the one-stop sites if we needed to have those. But I'll be meeting with our EMS department next week to see if they would like for us to buy some portable generators. Now, they're gonna have to store them for us, but then if anybody needs them, the county will have them. And that could come out of HAVA funds, Elizabeth. So I think that would be a good use of that money, don't you?
Yes.
Especially if the men are gonna be responsible for that. So just know that. Now, there was one other grant, you'll remember, that we got that technical life center, and it was all returned because we did not need it. And it explicitly said it couldn't supplant what the county was already budgeted for. So that has been returned to them. So you'll see on your financial page at the very bottom. On page 2. That grant and where it was returned, so. The one-stop bonus and the CARES supplement that went as a bonus to, each precinct worker was just an in and out. We had to tell them how many people and how many days everybody worked. And so they figured out what the amount was for us to give the money. So then they just sent the money in the county directly, paid those people. So that was an easy in and out. Does anyone have any questions?
My only question relates to so CARES gave us this grant for the 2020 elections, all related to that, I guess. Well, and was the CARES grant largely related to COVID?
Yes.
So will we be seeing what is the anticipation regarding whether we will be eligible for further CARES grants? Is that kind of one-time deal?
I assume it's a one-time deal, but we did have a department head meeting virtually last week. And I think and I'm sure it's gonna be in the paper, that the county is getting 5.8 million more in some CARES money because we're still doing shots and still doing that sort of thing. Now, I'm sure if the government decides, and as I said to John, I don't think we're ever gonna go back completely to normal. They've already indicated that we will probably be asking our workers to wear masks and probably using the pins, as a one-time deal. There are certain things that are gonna stay with us, I think, Bill. And I think if that happens, then the state will certainly search out resources for us to do that.
Because a lot of this, it relates to one-stop workers.
Yes,
And I don't know if that's the addition beyond which we normally would have spent for one-stop
well,
workers. because
you
of-
remember that they extended the time and they
Right.
required us to do so many sites.
Yes.
So that was not in our budget because that was an unforeseen
Right.
addition. And so that's why they said you will use it for these things because they knew that was an extra burden that the counties were having to answer to.
So I guess it would be good to know whether we can, when we plan, I guess we won't have the extraordinary needs for maybe even the 2022 election, I don't know. But
Well,
we do need to know how we're gonna pay for that.
Well, other than the disposable mask and gloves, all the sneeze guards and all the structural things we still have. We've got the safety stuff that is permanently in our office. That is the wonderful thing about it, that we were able to improve our situation in security is not only for germs, but for other things, so.
Thank you.
But I do see your point in poll workers. And if we operate more sites in the future, we'll have to keep those numbers in mind and figure out how to best handle that. So you are right.
And I will say, Elizabeth, as soon as they give us any indication for that, I will certainly let the county know. But I will have to say they did just what they said. Anything we needed, they'd come to us. And we've not been asked to reduce anything in the budget yet. And they've been having budget meetings all along So they've been working hard on the budget. And we have not been, normally department heads, we're told how the tax revenues are coming along and the sales tax, we normally get those reports. Craig, have you heard anything or noticed anything? I almost think that we have fared better than what was feared, don't you, Craig? So, seems like the economy. I know that the little chuck wagon hot dog stand, Ronnie has got to have made a better living this year than any other year. There's never a day that you don't go up there because you've got to stand in line or wait in your car in line. And of course, and the kids not being in school, they have, I'm sure they have loved working if they love working. So anyway,
You mentioned, on some of those funds, spending on some generators. If, before you make that decision, definitely let us talk about it, because a generator does not store well. So you can wind up buying 10-foot generators.
that's right, you gotta keep them up, you gotta check them and keep them up.
Yeah, and, they make them propane now, and they make them diesel, and either one of those are good. They'll store, and they'll crank when you want. But a gas powered, gasoline is not good. So definitely, if we're gonna spend that money, we don't want to wind up with 12 boat anchors.
Well, and spending some more time with this too, if there's something you see on here, we can discuss it at each time, but I think it looks good. I'm grateful to have these funds,
Okay, ready for the next thing, Madam Chairman?
We're ready.
Okay. You have this folded piece of paper. And if you want to guess, see this. Y'all will get in your mailbox the calendar. It is like 56,000 pages when I went to try to print it out. So it's a huge file, so I have to go in and take some things down. And we know that the state has been hesitant to release this calendar because of the uncertainty of the election schedule. And then to compound it, you're gonna see a September election requirement, a October election requirement, and a November election requirement. We have no September elections in Moore County. Now, Southern Pines does have a nonpartisan election with the possible primary, which we won't know that until the polling days are over. And so we're going to show you October, but know that if we don't have a primary, those October dates will not be in effect. You got the notice about what is being carried over from the 2020 changes of law. And one of those things is the extra board meetings, which definitely will not be needed in the municipal election, but they're there and we're gonna go by that. So, this is gonna be a twofold thing. This is gonna show you what we've been doing as well as what you got to do. So you will see, about standard list maintenance. And it happens on the 15th of every month. And they send a file to us of felons, deaths, and any cancellations that need to be taken care of. And for those that are with us as guests, if you want to grab that green stack of papers, that's the sample of the letters and reports that we've got. And for the board, you have got them in your folders, and yours are white, and they do contain private information, so that's why theirs is green. We redact that on theirs, but Bill, you and I talked much about the letters that the state produces for people So I expect I want to hear from you again on this because you're not the greatest ones. Those of us that I guess were taught that there was a proper way to do a letter, they fall short. But you'll see, and I'll put a little block, just tell you what this is a sample of, like the underage applicant. When we get the 16-year-old in, they get this letter. And I even read the letter that says that the parent, legal guardian, or the free registrant can call the Board of Elections and talk to them about this. And I didn't know that I could talk to anybody other than the voter. So I posed that question to the state, and I have stumped the chump. So they're trying to figure out why it's in there. Also, in the felon conviction, there's no reason to put their political party. It would make somebody think, well, they're canceling me because I'm a certain party, I'm afraid. And it does not matter if they have been convicted of a felony and been removed. It doesn't matter what their party was. I asked also why that was there, that I felt like it should not be there. I hope I didn't overstep my bounds for the board, but just know I did go through and question some things. But you will see a sample of the letters whenever they are removed as felons, and that they have an appeals process right there on that letter to send it back to you. The notice of the incomplete application is one that y'all are familiar with. That's what we were using for the incomplete request for absentees that Bill had so much trouble with out there at Dual. But that's what goes out. And there's a little section where the incomplete address to provide a valid, that is something that we can fill in. But all the rest of it is free-form, and we don't have any option.
Do those letters print here at this office?
Yes.
You know.
Yes,
They
they
don't
print
sell
here, no. There is much talk about, there is a third-party vendor that will do all that mailing for you, but I personally would prefer knowing they're done and it's staying in-house. Then it's a sample notice transferred from another county. So when we send out the list maintenance confirmation card and they check and tell us, and you'll see the back looks like a card, and they tell us they moved to Wake County, or they're in Wake County and Wake County gets it and sends it to us, then we will contact them at their address here in Moore County. And you see the back of that is a sample of your confirmation card. That's how they get to tell us where they are by the list maintenance, if they are still in the state. And then the notice of the incomplete application is the next one. And then the list for possible duplicates, deaths, felon, invalid dates of birth. And you'll notice on the invalid dates of birth, every one of those people are over 100 years of age. So we feel that they just took the wrong year in there. So we get all of that on the 15th of the month, if there are any out there. And that's whenever Terry goes through and tries to see if that person in another county is really ours. Then we check who has the most recent application date. And if they're us, then we keep it. If they're not us, we remove it. And they get a notice registered in another county. So all that is done. So you know that it's done every day on the 15th, that's sent down from the state. We've done the national change of address mailings, and I actually went a step further. You'll remember we did list maintenance, and so if they had become inactive through 2 federal elections, then they got removed. So if they just had not voted for 2 federal elections, they became inactive. So if they had a national change of address, they did not get a card because they were inactive in the system.
So I manually went through the list, and if there was an NCOA and they had been made inactive, we have sent them a card saying, you know, we didn't say you've never voted, but that's most of the ones that didn't vote. And there were probably about 25 of those that I manually went in and did a personal letter to get them to update their address with us. So we'll try to follow through with that. And Elizabeth, it does say, you know, that if we don't do our work, we have to answer to why it's not done. So I know that they watched. For years, Columbus County and Robeson County never took anybody off the roads. And you had that with your big counties, and I know Craig and Susan have heard me tell this story. They would let their numbers get up high so they get more budget money. And so the state started tracking whether county was doing their work. So you can rest assured that they watch these things to make sure that we are doing like we're supposed to do. And we have finished the list maintenance task. We have finished the NCOA. Now, not everybody has returned it, but we have tracked those that have returned it. And as I said, I went a step farther because I noticed somebody that I knew was NCOA, but a card didn't go out. And so I checked, and because she had been made inactive, we kind of flip-flop back and forth with the state. Which do you know, which comes first, the NCOA or the list maintenance? And for the past several years, they've done list maintenance first and then did the NCOA. Now the NCOA will come out again in the summer. It's done every 6 months. So it's only when you're coming off of that federal election that those two dates kind of don't sync. You've got to decide which one to do first. And I did point it out to the state that they need to emphasize to people that if somebody has been made inactive, that NCOA card is not going to go out. Even though we've got a good address, that's why I took the time to go through and I can contact the voter. Does anybody have any questions about that?
I just had a procedure question. So I'm looking at this one sheet that talks about potential duplicate registrations.
Yes.
And I see a few of these that are similar, the date of birth is the same, but then a couple of them are like it's a male name and a female name, still saying it's potential. I guess my question is, based on your experience, who's making that determination? And what's going to happen regarding the review of these to see whether
if we aren't able to reconcile it, it'll just stay like that. Now, Bill, if for some reason somebody has been put into our system, I know many people spare their names one way for a long time, then all of a sudden they decide they're going to be Betty with a Y instead of an IE. So if we find that we have a duplicate, we merge those records into one. So that helps us eliminate that. But if we're not sure that that is the same person, they're going to stay just like they are. And of course, that's one of those good things about those provisionals that we love to consider. And we would absolutely offer everybody a provisional ballot, and then y'all would rule that they were eligible if that were the case. If there would happen to
But
be.
you're saying that the board, I guess the state board will be looking to see if we are taking action on these, or at least reviewing them.
They'll look, make sure that we clean our records up here.
But there will be new records. You know,
Well, sometimes you think you've got everything cleaned up and a county will have gone in and checked a record. Somebody might have updated an address or something with us, with them, and it will then show up. You'd think that, you know, they wouldn't, but every now and then you'll have a record that comes up as a possible duplicate, that's old records. Sometimes it's the new person though, Elizabeth, that's why we check, he's got the latest registration. And if we have any uncertainty, we're gonna contact that voter. We had a very interesting incident in one of the people that we were looking for with our voter integrity project. They were registered in South Carolina. And we made the contact to verify that. And it was mentioned that it's against the law to be registered in 2 counties. And we have to be very careful. So we took a moment of instruction at the Board of Elections to do a little bit of education. And those of you who've been around for a while know that we had to reprint every form because the law changed and made it a felon to falsify any record of the vote in the voter registration. So that's a new penalty that's on every application, every request for a ballot. It's a felon to falsify records with the Board of Elections in North Carolina, not in any other. I don't know what it is in any other state. This person had moved to South Carolina, and she was quite taken back because she felt like that our staff person had accused her of being a felon. So of course the call came back and she wanted to speak with me. So I had a very nice conversation. She's okay. And she signed the part to take her off that she was registered there. So we got her cleaned up. But in doing that, I pulled up the application for South Carolina. And it is a penalty of perjury there too, but it says, and the pain and suffering that goes along with committing those things. Dale, I'm sure, and Richard, as attorneys, have you ever heard that your penalty is pain and suffering? So it kind of was a chuckle to me. But it's important to realize that every state does have their own rules and their applications are not consistent. And it's not really all that clear when they ask for your previous address that it's actually a note to let somebody know to cancel you. Most people say, well, I'm brand new in the state. This is my first address here. Don't give it. And that's why we don't get some of our cleanups. There are a lot of things that might help us in records if we could get some uniformity and some better explanation, in my opinion, but we can't, it's state by state, whatever they want to do.
Well, if you live in North Carolina and you move from Moore County to Wake County and you go register to vote in Wake County, doesn't Wake County notify Moore County if you change the address?
The state does that in the background. They take it out.
So that, I don't know how
We
you.
just come in one day and it says moved out of county. And then we go into jurisdictional chair and it'll say Wake County. So it's all done behind the scenes for us. Even if they did not indicate they lived in Wake County, because that's that big system altogether. And once you've got that perfect match of Social Security, 4 digits, date of birth, name, and all that, that's when that's done behind the scenes. Only when you've got a possible duplicate, when they don't match, do we get in the picture, Elizabeth.
Okay, so do you feel confident that our voter registration lists are up to date and well maintained?
You're all maintained.
All right. Does anybody have any questions, Richard? About list maintenance?
No.
No? So back to this calendar. Other than list maintenance, are there any other major, what's the major tasks here in the office? What are you guys working on?
Okay, let's turn over on that back side of the page, and you'll see in June, you'll see a UOCAVA election notice for September and October elections come up also in June. So that's 100 days out that we, through the state, have to publish on the UOCAVA website the notice of what's going to be up for election. That's to enable them to do that write-in ballot. Remember us having ballots so they could write in. So we've got to notify the military and overseas citizen 100 days before each election of what offices are going to be coming up. We don't maybe know at that time who the candidates are going to be, but that also will be published later. But that just gives them notice there's going to be an election. So that's what that is. And then on June the 29th is when the state board will be meeting to appoint county boards. And I know Elizabeth asked me to kind of talk about the process of y'all getting to that point. And we have chuckled in a way at all of the emails that have come in about y'all getting reappointed, because we have some new people that I'm not sure really understood the process themselves. And then some of our political party chairmen on the state level and some of their staff didn't understand exactly how that would be, because each party may do it differently. The state started the application, which is fairly new, right, Susan? And so y'all understand, have to answer the question. And then there was an error there. And so they finally, Ms. Barefoot communicated with me, and I forwarded on to y'all about the error. But I'm gonna go back to the old times of 30 years ago. The party would send in 3 names, and they would put in the 2 names that they wanted, and the third person probably didn't want to serve, and they were happy with that. And so at that point in time, it was assumed and presumed that the ranking from the county party would be, and at that time, the chairman was elected within the board itself. So at that time, it would be 2 of one party and 1 of the other. And the statute is specifically written, if you'll go back and read, even down to the precinct official, that if they only give us 1 precinct official for a precinct, that y'all, unless there's call, are to name that person. When they give you 2 to choose from, it's up to you. So it's kind of that way on the hire too. And sometimes what the party sent in got to Raleigh, and if you had some strings you could pull and get your name on top and get named, and somebody else didn't get named. Now, we had a very long-serving member that got on the board that way, and there were some very unhappy people when that happened. But anyway, that was politics. So evidently, it's now a little different since the governor will be naming or appointing the chair. But once it goes to the state, then the state will send it over to the state board for the appointment, and it is assumed that the ranking will be as it comes in from the state, and so they will be meeting to do that.
And so it seemed to me like are they not meeting in May, the state board, to elect the executive director?
She has a definitive term, and that used to not be, Elizabeth, it just rolled over. Yes, in fact, Karen told us it's in a couple of weeks that they will consider the appointment of the executive director.
Okay. And then the state board terms are coincide with the governor's rates, correct? So we basically have the state board who appoints the
Appoint y'all,
county
and then
board. County board comes on board in July, and then we deal with precinct judges, et cetera, as a county board in August. So it's just kind of like one domino effect.
And the state board's term is for 4 years, for yours is only for 2 years as the precinct officials. So the state board changes after the governor's race, so that's why it's tied in like that.
Okay, and this is kind of related to the budget sheet, was about the equipment. And I know that, we don't know what's gonna go on with voter ID, but I think that as a board, we need to be prepared one way or the other. And so I just wanted to make sure, because if I'm not mistaken, I think that camera is our voter ID camera. Will we have something?
That is correct, and Elizabeth, you'll be interested in learning that when some of the counties did their presentation of their virtual meetings, some of them actually said we're using the ID camera right now. But we have a second one ordered, it was $40, so it's with a tripod all of its own. So if we want multiple shots of Richard and of you, we're gonna have that covered,
Okay, great,
okay?
excellent. Just making sure we cover all of our bases. Another thing that I think is important is the voting equipment. And with your experience, Susan, I don't think you've gotten voting equipment, have you? Because ours is so old. I mean, it's there for 182 years old. So, so I'm not sure, Linda. In my mind, I'm thinking that the voting equipment needs to be tested before we use it in a general election. Is that true? And so if that's true, and I think our equipment, you said, was 6 years outdated when we got it 16 years ago.
That's correct.
I think that it wouldn't be a bad thing for us to think about replacing some of that equipment. And I know we've got a couple of estimates. There are only 2 vendors that are approved in North Carolina. And if we wanted to say have a goal to have it in place for 2024, when would we need to consider purchasing that? Is that in 2 years or sooner? Would we test
Well,
it in a Vistar
Elizabeth,
or a municipal?
we have already tested the DS200.
Okay,
What we would have to test would be that with their express vote, which is the ADA compliancy part of that. And the state has given some waivers because of the money that's available now to do some of the purchasing, to say that you can do a mock election and get through some of that. So, my recommendation is that we go ahead and get on board. I did request for budgetary purposes some cost analysis from the 2 vendors, and ES&S failed to give us credit for the iRoad, so they promised they would do it again. And they actually sent our rep by to see us within the last couple of weeks to make sure that everything was okay in Moore County. And we said everything's just fine in Moore County. So if you want to start that process, as soon as the municipals are over, we would notify them. They would come and do an in-house demonstration just for you. Then if you wanted to have some other county directors to come in and tell you their experience, since it's been new equipment for them in just a couple of weeks, I would recommend that.
okay. Well, I know I did something with Art online. So board members, those are available. What was that? Do you know? just a product demonstration or,
Yeah,
you know, and I guess it was virtual. So I think that if anyone was interested in a product demo, you could probably get one. And like I said, as soon as we think that this is something that needs to be put onto the table, we can schedule to have that. Would these demonstrations be anything that we could have during a meeting so that members of the public could also see that?
well, part of the requirement is that we have to have public input. So they, once y'all decide you want to consider it, then they would do demonstrations for the public.
Okay,
So that's part of the process.
excellent. So that's perfect. Any questions on voting equipment or?
Yeah, does that mean we would change out our entire
Yes.
system? And I guess, would you be comfortable with a brand new system for a presidential election year for its first run, or should it be in place for
Bill,
something that would be a little less?
I don't think the voters are gonna see that much of a change because
It's
North
a
Carolina requires a paper ballot with an optical scan, so they're not gonna see it. It's training the workers that would be a little bit of difference. Now, if we stayed with the DS-200, and that's the same company, they're almost identical. I'm hearing from some counties that the screens on the DS-200 during one stop needed to be cleaned very often. So, we're hearing stuff. And as I say that, y'all got the email from the state about the misinformation.
Yes.
And the state has now put something new on their webpage called misinformation and disinformation. And we had a long session on that. And so I am so glad that we can have this in the future to tell people to go and find out what the truth is. So, that's very important. That's one of our biggest enemies right now in the elections business is the misinformation and disinformation. So, to make a long story short, there were some issues on some things, but the good thing is we've had surrounding counties that have used, there's not that many that have HARP, but there are several. I think Chatham went to HARP, and Chatham's only Craig, 45 minutes away. So, we can get them to come and talk to us about it. One of the complaints through ES&S was that they did not quote that you had to have a separate computer for their stuff, and that they want to have it so they have the right software package on it, so they're not gonna let us buy it ourselves. And that was a big complaint, that counties had not put in that money to be charged for a computer from that company. But once they explained it, it made sense. It was just lack of information. So some of those bumps are gonna be out of the way, and we won't have to reinvent the wheel as we go into that. So it's not a bad thing as long as we've got the dependable equipment that we have to let some of that go by, in my opinion, Elizabeth.
Get some kinks worked out.
Yeah.
So, so you think that after municipals, or something we should?
And
start
I will
thinking
go
about-
ahead and touch base and get on their calendars for y'all, okay? So that we'll know that we won't forget, and they won't get pushed up because of something happening in our election.
That's a fairly large capital expense. How does that get paid for?
The county comes and the commissioners, this is something that they actually have to be involved with, and we can't enter into contract at all. The state law requires that they have to be involved. And we have advised them to us to this budget as it has been for the past several budgets. And each time, whenever they're crunching those numbers to try and keep the tax rate the same, they will say to us, Linda, we're gonna take that out, but don't worry, if y'all get to the point you need it, we will release or do something, we'll take care of that. And so that's the way, and that is not unusual, is it, Craig, as a commissioner to do that, so.
your relations with the county commissioner or such, you'll keep them apprised.
Oh, yeah.
Now we are gonna do this.
Yes, yes. In fact, I've got to meet with Wayne about a couple of things. One of them happens to be redistricting. Now, we don't have any towns that elect by district, and neither do we with commissioners, but we have residency districts for commissioners and boards of education. And so there is a chance, depending on our growth, they may have to adjust some of those residency districts. So I've got to meet with him, with Wayne and Misty, and let them know when the filing periods are and what that's gonna be. But it appears that we definitely look like that we're going forward with municipal now, and the filing, they said, would happen in December. I don't know how you can file when you don't know what district somebody's got to be in, but anyway, we'll see. And it's not unusual that as soon as those districts are filed, there will be litigation and we'll end up in court over it. So we quite often have September primaries in years after the census. It's no fun. Kind of rushes us, doesn't it, Susan?
Yeah.
But it's part of the game with redistricting.
Thank you. The only other question I had for the board this evening was that, we don't meet on a regular basis. And I know that it's kind of convenient. But I'm wondering if you would like to consider meeting on a more regular basis when we're not, having absentee meetings, in order to keep apprised of all of the things that the board is working on. Does anyone have any thoughts?
I felt uncomfortable with the fact that we haven't had a meeting in quite a while. Mainly because I believe we have a duty to oversee the function of the Board of Elections. It's nothing more than just getting a status report of how things are, running. So it seems to me we should have a regular schedule, maybe modified between elections, so that they're not every month, maybe every 2 months, whatever it might be. I think it's important for us to carry out those duties and to demonstrate our overview and supervision.
Mr. Ashton, can you speak into the microphone? She can't hear you in front.
Yeah, well, I certainly
Yeah,
can.
speak up into the microphone because they're not hearing you online. Sorry.
Yes, I just, I'm not going to repeat it again.
No, go from now on, yeah. Going forward.
I
Okay.
know no one else was doing it very well except that over here at Elizabeth. So I assume these were pretty sensitive.
Well, thank you, Richard. I do agree that it's important for us to keep in touch. And I'm not sure exactly how we should do that, when we're not having election items all the time. And I like your idea of, maybe quarterly or something like that, but I feel like we probably do meet, probably every.
We have another meeting set July 20th for our, when we take our oath of office, I believe that is the meeting. So that's 3 months from now. That could serve as a quarterly.
Would that make you feel comfortable or not
Well,
comfortable?
Sure, that'd be fine, but what I'm saying is really establishing the fact that we will have periodic meetings in the interim between elections. So we know that is our obligation as board members to exercise and demonstrate our exercise of, meeting our accountability for the function of the Board of Elections.
I agree 100%. Would you object to us meeting virtually on
No,
a monthly basis?
That's fine.
We would just check in. I know you're, is that too much?
I was just surprised because it was a quarterly thing.
I know.
Last month.
I know, I'm trying to, trying to figure out how to keep track of it. And I think that if we could do it and just be quick about it, it would be one thing. And so I do think we can just think about it. We don't have to make any decisions about anything tonight, but I think we need to think about it. And I do think it's important for all the reasons that Richard stated. And I also think it's just, it's important to keep in touch. And, you know, sometimes it's getting back on the bike. So let's think about that for a while. And I believe that we have some issues that we may need to call another meeting to discuss. Is there a time that works better to schedule that for anyone? Then the next, I would really prefer it after May 10th.
I don't know if we can do afternoon or not. I don't know about our schedule, but
I can be accommodated.
afternoon works good for me.
What time, please?
Lunchtime or after time, or I'm good in the morning, you know, probably after 10 a.m., let's just say, anything after 10.
And before? And before what time in the evening?
Well, 6 o'clock is good.
As long as it's not gonna be,
As an end point.
okay.
After 5 o'clock is good for me, but I'm just one person, so I'll do whatever.
Well, I'm fine evenings like this.
5 o'clock,
5 o'clock.
Yeah.
Can you make 5 o'clock?
what?
Can you make
go
5?
ahead. Yeah.
Do 5.
Okay, Glenda, would you like to pick a date?
Well, there's several things that I have heard this week in my conference that I want y'all to hear. I mean, it is amazing what counties went through. They had a major, major breach in Chatham County that I did not ever know about. And they had the emergency manager to do the presentation. I would have thought it would have been the IT person, but it was not. It was the emergency manager, and he did such a fabulous job talking about how they protected the information and how they got along without internet, without phones, without printers. It was amazing, absolutely amazing. And so I would love to have him come to talk to us. And I'd like for Wayne and for Chris from IT and our emergency manager to be there, because I would have thought it would have been IT that took care of it, but they did not. He did. And so I want y'all to hear that story personally. And so I'd like some time to get him. But if y'all were up to meeting a couple of times, that's even better, because there are some issues we need to address. So whatever y'all, what's good for y'all. I've got a lot of doctor's appointments coming up in the next week or so, but other than the 17th, I'm not available on the 17th.
So is this for a closed session?
Well, we've got a couple of different things, so yes. I think so. We might add some other things.
So you're talking about having one meeting and having like closed session first and then having the speaker, or vice versa, or two separate meetings? What do you specifically say?
Yes.
Two separate.
Whatever,
meetings?
whatever y'all want to do, I would say we need to do.
What do we want to do?
Well, I thought what you were saying, we needed two separate meetings just to get different topics to cover.
Yes, I think that would be better. We could do it, but it's gonna make y'all have to be here longer. I think it'd be better to have two separate meetings.
So we need to
Soon
schedule
after the
one regular meeting with a break up front, and then we move into closed session and be done, right? And then we'll schedule another
We're gonna
meeting.
let Glenda
With our
decide that.
visitors?
If she wants to do, when she can do visitors, she can schedule visitors and let us know.
Yeah.
And if we could just agree on a time to meet next time, hopefully sometime in between. Now, you said you're full through the 17th?
No, she just couldn't do this.
On the
I
17th.
can't do the 17th.
Okay, well, that week between the 10th and the 14th is good for me, and I can be flexible if you let me wait until the 10th to the 14th. So I can do morning or afternoon or 5, 6, or 10.
Free all week.
It's gonna be a good week.
To look at the week of 10th through the 13th.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
How about Tuesday, the 11th? Is Tuesday good? Or Thursday? Okay. All right, so let's schedule this for Tuesday, May the 11th at 5 o'clock, 5 p.m.
And this will be for the closed session, Madam Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
All right, well, thank you, Linda, for preparing all of that
Well,
information.
there's a couple of things that
Okay, please.
we skipped over.
Okay,
The precinct official retention, we mailed out 305 letters to people that worked in November. An additional about 75 to 80 of people that had worked previously but did not work during COVID, for them to let us know if they're willing to help us again. So as soon as those finish coming in, we'll furnish both political party chairs the people that are willing to work. And then it is the responsibility of the party chair to give back to us their recommendation of who they would like to serve in the precincts. And so I just want to let y'all know that we did that. And I did a nice thank you letter and told them, because they never know what results are, told them how hard they had worked and gave them numbers so that they would know that. And then the people that couldn't, I said, we know you weren't able to, but we hope you'll come back again. So those things have come out. The state is continuing to do Democracy Heroes. And actually, they're asking us to recommend people to be featured in their website. So you go on the website now, they've done a lot of work and they've got some individuals. So I've got several people I'd like to call and ask if they're willing to be interviewed and write up that story.
That's great.
Yeah, it is great. So,
Do we have any formalized way to solicit from the folks who worked in the election for their input as to their experience?
actually, therefore,
Their experience while working in the election? Any questionnaires or, it'd be interesting to know. I'm sure you hear informally, but I'm just wondering if there's a
yeah.
formal
no,
process.
But once again, I came away with lots of good information. In fact, I started a chart to ask Sand Hills Community College to give me a page on their website for student information. Now, it was designed mainly for the university to have housing, so that, you know, somebody from another state that now moved to North Carolina as a student, to help them in their education about how you vote and register in North Carolina and all that. But I still want to do a student page. And I know Dr. Dempsey is a big advocate of voting. And so I think we'll be able to get a blog on their page in their website. So also for Moore County Schools, you know, I have parents call me and say, I want to run for school board when they're upset. And how do I do that? And I said, well, you know, filing period's already gone. Well, how would I have known that? And so I'm going to ask the schools if we can put a little information block on there about Board of Education elections coming up and when the filing period is on their websites. I mean, you know, and I have mentioned this to Elizabeth. While I don't do social media and that sort of thing. If you're not doing things digitally, you're left behind, right, Craig? That's where our young people are, that's where everybody's going, so we've got to make sure that we have that presence within the bounds of the law, but I just, I want to reach out to those avenues. And I even think that as we go forward, when you've got the big employers such as the hospital, that's a good place to educate the voters. If we can get voters educated, then we won't have problems on election day. And people are upset because they can't vote wherever they want to, that sort of thing. So
I think Bill had a good idea though on that survey for our workers. I think that would be a good idea because they see some things and like you said, if they're not voicing them to you, we're all busy and you're busy and the staff's busy. It'd be nice if they had something, a Survey Monkey, website or just a paper that they could write down. Because they maybe see something one little thing that could have made things so much better and it gives them some buy-in too.
And Craig, I will say, I hear that through the chief judge, but that is secondhand or whatever, as we do that.
Right.
So y'all want to send me some suggestion or questions to ask? Okay.
I know a lot of times, well, me, a lot of times you'll notice something small and you think, I'm just not going to mention it. But if you had something to write it down and, if you get back to it.
Well, we've got it all set up where they can answer the survey.
Yeah, we're set up through MailChimp, so I can send out a mass email. MailChimp, yes.
Yeah.
So I can
That
send out,
monkey.
I can create one email, and as long as I have all their, right now I have, I forget, 400 email addresses in there. I can send that out. Now, here's the thing, with something like that, also, I found because we send out a computer,
Yes.
like a quiz, like how comfortable do you feel typing and things like that, trying to figure out some of our newer poll workers, if they want to use the computer or would they prefer doing something else at the polling place. Sometimes depending on your email, it goes to their spam folder or junk folder. So we ran into that a lot. Like some people weren't getting some of the emails because it went to their. So, most of them got it, but there was a percentage that didn't get something. And so, oh, I'm not. So I think, as long as we're okay with knowing that a percentage probably won't get the email and answer the survey, and we get a good portion or a majority of it, then we'll get feedback.
And we did use traditional mail for the reply back to make sure that we were getting to them.
You do still have some poll workers that don't use email.
Well, it sounds like we asked a lot of questions along the lines of what works for you, but maybe not as many questions about what can the Board of Elections do better.
Right.
So maybe that's another focus of
And see,
questions.
as we go through all the forms at the end of the day, and when they're not completed right, to me, that's our testament there of where we've got weaknesses and we've got to do better in our training. So that's another subject for a whole nother day.
Are there any other topics on the agenda?
I would like to go ahead and bring you up to date on the voter integrity part. And gives our guests a copy. This is as far as we have gotten. And there's a couple of days that I have not worked on it, of responses back from voters who their loved ones have confirmed the death, or that we have found the voters registered in other states. Now, whenever I'm down to the states that don't have those public records available, and I have to call sometimes, depending on the state, I've got to find out the county And then I've got to contact the county. It's not every county has statewide systems. In fact, y'all will remember Veronica DeGraffenreid, that was with the state board with us. She was named the Secretary of State for the state of Maryland, and she is in charge of getting them up with a centralized voter registration system. They're so lucky to have her, and I'm happy for her that she's having that chance to be the Secretary of State up in Maryland. But anyway, she's got a big job to do. Since every state is not as advanced, I'm at a slow point now of having to individually just work on each one by one. And our friends brought us some more work tonight, so I'll give y'all an update later on that, okay?
So these have all been removed.
We cleaned up our records this far, yes.
And out of curiosity, how would you go about,
What is the voter integrity program people doing, Bill? How they coming up with the names and all that? There, I think, and Carol Fielding is with us, but they find the inactive voters that has never voted and send them something. They actually are giving me generally a piece of mail with the history and the background that they have researched. But then we have to do our own research.
you have to confirm?
Yes, and they're not going in and trying to talk to state officials about, is this person registered, so.
And were there others where they raised a question where there was not a problem?
Well, if there's a problem, we can't do anything with it, it's just left. Like, I don't think my good friend Jean Burbidge name's on here. They had her moving to Maryland, and she's actually right over here at Plantation. She has dementia, and she is in that unit. Her children live in Maryland, and so, there was a change of address to Maryland, which Jean is right over there. Now, she doesn't know me from Adams, and I used to take her to church every Sunday, and she's in her 90s, but anyway. So I know where she is, but she's not going to vote. So she will eventually come off the record.
So most of these are situations where people moved away and they just didn't come.
That's right, yes, sir.
Okay.
And some of them could have shown up on the NCOA, so then we had a place to send them the opportunity to tell us where they are. In fact, I'm just gonna stop here.
Yeah, like there's a couple on here on Seven Lakes, their address was in Seven Lakes, and I know for a fact they moved away maybe 4 years ago, so, yeah.
You know that for a fact, Susan, but until we get,
Oh, understood.
that official, I want y'all to feel good about, we are not removing anybody, that we're not able to do that. Now, that's not to say they're not gonna come back someday and come in here and say, I'm gonna go, I've always been registered here. And there's where that wonderful provisional ballot comes in, that fail-safe requirement of the federal law that says we're not gonna disenfranchise anybody due to error. So just know that. So if people says, what are you doing now? Well, you can tell them what we're doing. You can show them this calendar, and there's better than 56,000 pages trying to print it all. Of course, they had blank after blank after blank that didn't fill in. So that'll be coming in your inbox, okay? We got a little cleanup so you don't have a lot of junk in there.
A lot of information to think about.
And we've had a problem with little tiny mice our count today, we've killed 22 mice in traps. And so they finally sent in an exterminator that left some big balls. But
Thank you for calling the
yes,
housing next door, the
they pulled up all those grapevines and did all that.
field mouse came in.
And then my little vet to be tells me that mice have 16 babies when they have babies.
Y'all need a cat.
I'll give you one, I'll give you three.
We got one stay around outside.
That's what we do, we need to have that.
I'll drop one off. You can feed them out back, or but there's a picnic table.
Drop two of them off. It's two for one night. Well, I was just afraid they were building housing for the board for election.
Okay, Madam Chairman, thank you. I think we're good now.
All right, does anyone have anything for discussion? Any further discussion? Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, I was really disturbed from this meeting because I heard the chairman looking at me saying, "You're right." And that was almost more than I can
Hey,
do.
Craig gave you some props too.
I know, I was gonna let that one slide. I was gonna talk.
I was almost- I almost had to be on the record as saying, this is his first.